Hey guys, welcome to the Tuff Puff. This is Daniel speaking. Today is Wednesday, so we're going to be doing a Legacy deck profile and a couple games. So today I have for you the Yeti. I don't know if you guys know about this deck. It was mainly prominent back in 2014. It was innovated by Kevin Kobayashi and Kevin Baxter. Two different variants of the deck were created, which pretty much got merged into what we know and love today. The idea of the deck is that you have Lugia-EX, who has his Overflow ability. If you knock out a Pokemon with damage from one of his attacks, you take an extra prize. And then Plasma Gale does 120, and you discard a Plasma attached to Lugia. So the idea was that you had Lugia-EX, and then you had a couple Deoxys. So usually it would take Lugia, a hit from Thundurus, and 3 Deoxys to hit a total of 180 damage to knock out a lot of the EX Pokemon from back then. And you would take 3 prizes in doing it that way. So that pretty much is what made the deck so interesting and so strong, is that Lugia just took prizes like nothing. And you had Thundurus to fall back on, like if you were running out of Plasmas or if your opponent kept using Enhanced Hammer to take them off. And then you also had Deoxys if you're playing against Blastoise or something like that, where they attach a bunch of energies to a Keldeo or even a Black Kyurem. You could just Deoxys to hit some damage and then clean up with Lugia or get a one-shot on a Keldeo. And then lastly, what really made this deck stand out was the inclusion of Snorlax from Plasma Storm. So what Snorlax did, his block ability says as long as he's your active, your opponent's active can't retreat. So what you could do is like start drawing prizes with Lugia, kind of force your opponent into always having an answer to Lugia, so they have to burn through their deck to find their answer to knock out your Lugia with a bunch of energy on it, or else they're gonna get hit with a couple more Plasma Gales. And in doing that, late game they'd have very few cards in their deck, and they'd have a very slim chance of escaping block. So you could Lysander up a Pokemon like a Jirachi-EX or something that wasn't really meant to be an attacker in their deck, like a support Pokemon, and then you just block them with Snorlax, and they'd be stuck active all game until the game was over. Another interesting thing about Snorlax is that you play Scramble Switch as your ace spec, and what Scramble Switch does, you switch your active with one of your bench, so it's just a switch card, and then you can move as many energy attached to the old active as you'd like to the new active. Now, in doing that, let's say you have a Lugia with 3 energy on it, because you just Plasma Galed and discarded a Plasma, you could attach a double colorless energy to your Snorlax, play Scramble Switch from Lugia to Snorlax, and use Team Pact, which did 30 times the number of Plasma Pokemon in play. Now, that means if you have 5 Plasma Pokemon in play, Snorlax active, and 4 on your bench, you're hitting 150. Now, if 3 of those happen to be Deoxys, you're hitting 180, which pretty much one-shots any EX in the format back then, because there were no Megas and there was no Fury Belt. So that's pretty much the idea of the deck. Like, you have all this going on here that works together, and then you have a bunch of supporters and items and stuff that help you set up your Lugia and help you stay in the game longer. Now, in Legacy, we have Celebi Prime in Venusian Genesect, making the deck much better and much more popular. So to kind of quell that matchup, I have Heat Boiler Heatran. He does 60, and if he's affected by a special condition, it does 60 more, but he never is. The whole reason I have him in there is because with 3 Deoxys on the field, I'm hitting 180 on a Venusian or a Genesect, even donking them. If I could get that turn 1, and that's all they have on the field. Because a lot of the time, Venusian Genesect decks will start a Venusian, attach a Grass, and pass because they don't expect it to get donked. So, and that's the whole reason for him. And then going into the supporters, we have 4 Juniper, which is pretty standard in Legacy because we don't have VS Seekers, so we need Heavy Juniper. 4 N, also kind of standard for this format. 3 Colress. So Colress was pretty much only useful in Plasma decks at such a high number because you're always going to have a full bench. I think Blastoise Blastoise used Colress to an extent. Empoleon, Flygon, those kind of decks really prospered from Colress, but a lot of them only ran maybe one copy maybe 2 copies sometimes. But this deck always ran like a really heavy 3 cores. We also run 1 Shadow Triad. This is to get back a Plasma, any team Plasma card, but it's mostly used to get back your Plasma energies late game. Like you go Plasma Gale, discard a Plasma, Shadow Triad, and you can spam Plasma Gale with that. Like even if you don't have Thunderous, so that you don't have to waste a retreat into Thunderous and waste an attack that isn't a Plasma Gale. We have 1 Skyla to search out any of our little items here, even our Frozen City. We have 2 Frozen City. The idea is when they attach an energy from their hand to one of their Pokemon, they put 2 damage counters on it. So versus Blastoise, they can put down a bunch of energies on their Black Kyurem, and now it's susceptible to a knockout from a Lugia. Versus any matchup that's not Plasma, if they attach 1 energy, they take 20. So now Lugia can hit 120 with 4 Deoxys to do 160, which is a KO on an EX, or 3 Deoxys if they only have 170 HP. 3 Ultra Ball, 2 Plasma Ball. This number is interchangeable. You could go 3 Plasma, 2 Ultra, 4 Plasma, 1 Ultra, but I think 5 balls is the perfect number for balls. I just like the 3 Ultra to discard some of my items here because we have Junk Arm. So having them in the discard means they're more easily accessible through Junk Arm. 3 Switch because switching is important. A lot of Yeti decks I believe ran like 4 Switch, 1 Scramble Switch, or 3 Switch, 1 Scramble, 1 Escape Rope. But I like 3 Switch and no Escape Rope because with Escape Rope you can force your opponent to switch out their active, so you can't keep the block going. What else do we have? 1 Catcher. I've been playing this deck for the last couple of weeks and I haven't been running Catcher. I decided to finally put it in because while I don't need it to win games and while I've won plenty of games without it, I think having the option is always better than not having the option. And then 1 Max Potion because you could Junk Arm for it. Like what you could do is attack with Lugia, tank a hit since you have 180 HP. Play Scramble Switch to another Lugia and heal the bench Lugia. So it's like they wasted an attack and they're still staring down 2 Lugias. So 4 Chorus Machine to help get out your Plasma energies and to attack faster. Bicycle, draw cards till you have 4 cards in hand. I thought 1 Bicycle was sufficient because obviously we don't have room for much more. And also, since I do run the 3 Ultra Ball instead of just 2 and 3 Plasmas, and I run the 3 Junk Arm, I expect that like eventually, at some point, I'll have a hand that's very small after utilizing these cards to discard my other cards, where Bicycle could actually replenish my hand. Also, Bicycle is like kind of safety from an N to 1. It's just an extra item card in here that you can get off of an N to 1 to replenish your hand. We have Tool Scrapper here. Tool Scrapper is to obviously take off Floatstone from Garbodor, Life Dew from Sableye, and it just removes like it removes those Silver Mirrors from decks like Tool Drop, Reshiram Typhlosion. So Tool Scrapper is pretty much meant for those few matchups. Lastly, for items here, we have an Iris. During this turn, your Pokemon's attacks do 10 more damage to the active Pokemon for each prize card your opponent has taken, before applying weakness and resistance. So Iris is one of my favorite supporters, probably one of my like top 3 supporters. Because what you can do is you could drop Lugia. If they've taken 5 prizes, you could drop Lugia, play Iris, and then hit 170 without even needing a Deoxys. So that's pretty much what Iris is for. Like, if you can't hit the knockout, the one-shot on an EX, now you can, pretty much. It's just to come back late game. It's an interesting card that a lot of people don't usually expect, and they don't see it coming. So that's why we run that. And then lastly, we have 4 double card lists. So that's pretty necessary because you have a guy that takes 4 energy to attack and a guy that takes 5 energy. 4 Plasmas necessary for Lugia to keep using Plasma Gale. 3 Prism so that we can spread the love. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Pokemon in our deck require 1, 2, 3 different types of basic energy, so we run that. And then 2 Lightning. And the reason I run the 2 Lightning energy is because Thundurus needs to use his little Raiden Knuckle attack, and since it takes 1 Lightning, that's what we run. And since Lost Remover is such a huge card in Legacy, this kind of breaks through Lost Remover. So like you could use Raiden Knuckle, put an energy on Lugia, and then you could attach DCE and Chorus Machine for a Plasma energy onto Lugia, all in one turn, and get the knockout. without having to, you know, waste too many resources doing so. And they can't take off those 2 energies with Lost Remover. So, so that's kind of a way to just get around that little thing. So that's the deck, guys. It's a really fun one. It was really strong. Kevin Baxter, Kevin Kobayashi, they get all the credit. Daniel and David Lopez took the deck and made it even better, both getting, like, I think 500 to 600 championship points back in 2014 with the deck each. Those guys killed it. I think Justin Sanchez ran the deck to a top 8 finish in Wisconsin Regionals in 2014. He ran the David and Daniel Lopez list. And, yeah, so that's a little history for you. That's the deck, and I'll see you guys in a game. Hey, guys, so we just made it into a game. Looks like we're fighting a Virizion Genesect deck. I see grass, colorless, and metal. It could easily be a 6 corners kind of deal, but since Pokemon only really shows 3 different typings in that little preview, that's all we know. But I'm thinking that's Smeargle, VG, and then Jirachi-EX. Okay, so our hand's not perfect, but we do get Thundurus, we do get Heatran, so I can, like, keep these in my hand or something, and then, like, kind of surprise my opponent. Obviously, going first, you don't want to bench anything just yet, because you still, like, have the option to bench them after seeing your top deck. Yeah, so it is Virizion Genesect, so I'll go ahead and put an energy on Thundurus, drop a Deoxys, drop Heatran, Ultra Ball, get out another Deoxys. The idea here is probably to set up Heatran slowly with Raiden Knuckle. It depends on what I draw off this Juniper and what options I can have for the next turn. Okay, so it looks possible to kind of hit this this Heatran next turn. I can Chorus Machine onto Heatran, Scramble Switch the energy over, and then Ultra Ball for another Deoxys. So I'm gonna play the Chorus Machine now, just to be safe. And then that's pretty much it for my turn. So being able to kill this Virizion here would be very nice. Yeah, hopefully it's not an N, because I like my hand. Though, even if it is an N, okay, cool, yeah, punt. So that Jirachi is a free 3 prizes for my Lugia. He's going to be sitting on the bench all game. And this Virizion here is going to be 2 prizes if he doesn't retreat it, which I doubt he wouldn't, like. Okay, I can get out of that laser, even if he flips heads. Okay. So yeah, what he could do is, like, get out a Celebi and obviously retreat it so that he doesn't give up 2 prizes if I set up the Heatran. And considering I'm a Plasma deck, it's not a far off idea that I could set up the Heatran in this turn. So I wouldn't blame him for doing something like that. I'm glad he's benching Pokemon, though, because the more Pokemon he benches, the more I can get off of my Chorus, which means I could put this Junk Arm back in my deck. Cool, Snorlax. I don't know if I bench the Snorlax here. I don't think I do. I'm going to go ahead and actually discard that and discard Skyla to keep the Juniper in my deck. I'm going to go for this knockout here. Get my Deoxys. So all we need is a Plasma, not a Plasma, but a Prism energy off of a Chorus to 8, which isn't too far off. If we do miss it, we're not stuck active because we could just retreat thanks to Sky Arrow Bridge. Okay, cool. So we ended up hitting it. So I'll knock out the Sky Arrow. Attach the Prism. And I want to bench the Snorlax because I do fear an N and a G booster setup, but I think saving it would also be kind of a good idea because no matter what, his whole field right now is weak to fire, so this Heatran's gonna put in work. What's in my discard? I still have the Scramble Switch to get back, in case he does like send up my Snorlax. So I'll bench the Snorlax just to be safe in case he does get like an N and a G booster, so that I have my little block there. And I'm gonna Heat Boiler and take these 2 prizes. I didn't play the Chorus Machine because I don't know who I want to put the energy on yet. Okay. So what I can do next turn if he gets to the knockout is send up the Thundurus, attach, bench Lugia, put an energy on Lugia. And then Junk Arm for Chorus Machine and double Chorus Machine onto Snorlax with a DCE. The next turn, if the Lugia somehow gets knocked out, so that I have 2 different answers to his Genesect. But hopefully he ends up missing the booster, because he has 6 cards in hand. So I'm going to be affected by a special condition, so I can actually hit 150 now, though it doesn't matter. Cool. Alright, yeah, so my opponent just scooped because he was just going to be too far behind. I could have just put the DCE on Snorlax and then Chorus Machine to it, and then he was just a DCE away and I was going to be down to 3 prizes. So there's no way my opponent could have won that, because I also had the Jirachi on the bench as a couple free prizes for later on. So I'll go ahead and play one more game with the deck, because that game was kind of quick, and I'll show you guys a little bit more of the Yeti. Okay guys, so we just made it into another game. I didn't get to really see what types he was using. Yeah, I'll go first. Why not? One thing that I notice a lot about about PTCGO is that I go first all the time. I know it's random, but I just go first a lot. Like most of my games. I don't know what this thing does. Discard a special energy attached to the defending Pokemon. Oh, that Kyurem's annoying. I remember him. I definitely remember him. That Kyurem was actually, I think, a staple in 6 corners decks at one point, because, or no, it wasn't 6 corners. It was a tech in Cake, which was Cobalion, Electrode, Kyurem, and it didn't run this Kyurem. It ran the, I believe, the Outrage Kyurem, the Glaciate one, but they teched this one in to discard special energies from TDK, I think, once TDK came out. I might be mistaken, but I'm pretty sure that's what this guy's from. Otherwise, this guy's just playing a random deck. Let's see, weak 2 metal there. Yeah. Those darn ice types. So I'm going to go ahead and just Chorus Machine the other energy. I know that's my last Plasma, but I just want to get it out of my deck because I got to play this N. I'm hoping to hit a DCE and a Frozen City to put 20 on him. So we hit the Frozen City, but we didn't get the DCE. But that's quite alright, because we can attach still. We could be prepared for next turn. And I'll waste this Chorus Machine. I don't really, I don't want my opponent to know that I don't have another Plasma in my deck. Alright, my opponent just scoops for some reason. So I didn't want my opponent to know that I didn't have a Plasma in my deck. So playing the Chorus Machine was iffy. But I ended up doing it anyways just because I didn't want to get end and draw back into the dead card. In real life, you can kind of play it off that you just want to fail it, because you have 1 in your discard to attach and you don't want to get the last one out just yet. But online, it's kind of obvious that if you don't grab something, there's a good chance that it's either prized or that you just ran out. But anyways, that's the deck. I couldn't really get a long game, but people just don't want to face Yeti because Lugia, it's pretty much speed Lugia, and people just don't like speed Lugia. It's the same as Vespiquen Vileplume that I posted on Monday. It's it's one of those decks that people just hate playing against. And the reason Lugia is like such a hated deck is just because the Pokemon takes an extra prize like on pretty much turn 1 or 2, like every game. Like taking 4 prizes by turn 3 is a very easy thing to pull off with Speed Lugia variants. And while this isn't 100% devoted to Lugia, it still manages to hit the mark quite often. And I think people in PTCGO just get salty about it. So that's the power of the deck. The Yeti lives in Legacy, and I think it's a very strong play. I'm not sure if Legacy will ever become like a big thing or anything, but for now, you guys can test it, have some fun with it, kind of relive history in one of the best decks that Kevin Kobayashi ever created, and Kevin Baxter. There's a little. The reason I'm crediting both of them is because there's like kind of a debate between which Kevin actually created the deck. People are saying that Baxter played the deck at Cities, way before Kevin won a city championship with it, but the way I see it, the way I've heard it, is that I think Kevin Baxter ran a TDK, Thunderous Deoxys Kyurem, with one Snorlax in it, or he ran like one Lugia, one Snorlax or something, and Kobayashi made the deck a little more geared towards getting Lugia. And other ways I've heard it is that they just both independently just happen to think of the same deck at the same time, and that's not too much of a far off notion, because I mean, you know, with so many incredible players and innovators in the game, especially ones such as Kobayashi and Baxter that still to this day are shaping our meta, I could see this deck, you know, being created by both of them at the same exact time. The same thing kind of happened this year, even with Azul Griego and Kevin Baxter both made the same like quad Zoroark deck for standard at the same time, and both won a cities, or not a cities, but a state championship with it. So I mean, that stuff is still happening. It's not like they copied each other. They both independently created the deck at the same time and just so happened to both do well with it. So anyways, that's the Yeti. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you guys can play the deck and get some decent results with it. Let me know. Like, comment, and subscribe. Come check out our tournament on Friday, and I'll see you guys next time.